Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. We are back. We're in week 8 in Sweden, and in Norway we are also in week sort of 7/6. There's a lot of different teams have played different amount of games, but it's good to be back on this week's show. Free to all you listeners and subscribers, and as ever, I'm joined by my colleague and friend Steve Wiss. Steve, how are you today?
Jonathan, I'm doing okay. I'm enjoying the sunshine here in Yorkshire. It's a great day. And yes, there's been plenty of football in action here to really recap the May the 16th round in Norway.
Yeah, Yorkshire, son, I'm familiar with that at this moment in time, I have to say. Yeah, we've had an interesting couple of weeks. Obviously, for those of you on Patreon who follow us, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast, we had a weekend preview show, which we did, and we had our predictions for the week. We hit 2 out of 3 again this week, 2 correct predictions out of 3, and they were all in Norway this week. Steve came up with a trio of tips for you, and he's been successful in 2 out of 3 of them, which is a decent effort to keep our success rate above 65%. Roughly. So, Steve, well done on that. But firstly, and if you want to obviously tune in for the weekend shows and our betting previews, 18 plus, go to patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast. We are going to start in Norway this week, and then in part 2, we will move to Sweden's Allsvenskan to catch up with everything that's been going on there. But let's look at the latest round of fixtures in Eliteserien, round 6, just taking place all on the Monday, the 16th of May, which, Steve, you're going to explain to us in a minute why it was every single game was on that same day. But I'll read out the scores quickly before we get into it. So we had Arlesen 0, Molde 2, Bodø Glimt 1, Tromsø 1 in the derby, Northern Derby up there. Nice point for Tromsø. Christiansen, my boys, 0. Strømsgodset 3. Christiansen having a terrible season so far, aren't they, the Owls? Lillestrøm 1, Sarpsborg 0. Odd 0, Haugesund 4. That's a big result. Rosenborg 3, Sandefjord 0. Viking 3, Jerv 0. And Vålerenga 1, HamKam 1. Steve, firstly, tell us why all the games were on the same day, pretty much at the same time, firstly, and then obviously sort of a top billing analysis of the latest round of results. What are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's known as Football Day in Norway. It's kind of like the Boxing Day round over there. Their national day is, of course, the 17th of May. And I hope everyone in Norway listening had a fantastic day of celebration up there for that day. So it's a traditionally a massive footballing day is the 16th. There was a lot of full houses. I think several venues got completely sold out. And in addition, Obos had some big games as well. Brann had a good win. I think that they sold their stadium out, and Fredrikstad won as well. Big fallen giant there. And they had nearly 13,000 in for their match, I think. So it was a great footballing day. The weather looked good as well up there. And, you know, there were definitely some surprise results. Some of the ones that were more expected that we'll go into soon. But yeah, it was quite refreshing, actually, Jonathan, to see everyone play on the same day. We don't get that enough over in the UK here enough now. There's games on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, match of a day sometimes is like just 2 or 3 games now, isn't it, over here in the UK? It's ridiculous. So it was refreshing to see everyone play on the Monday.
Yeah, it's like Craig David, isn't it? You know, had a game on Monday, had a game on Tuesday, had a game Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Chill on Sunday, whatever. But yeah, no, I know what you mean, and like you said, it was a bit noteworthy just seeing all the games on one day, just one evening game, as you mentioned, which was the HamKam game. The rest of them all played at the same kickoff time as well. So yeah, congratulations there, Football Day. Sounds like a lot of fun. The first talking point, I guess, really, the champions, Bodø Glimt. Not exactly going to plan for them this season, is it? They're now 10 points off the top of the table. I know they've got 2 games in hand on Viking, who are top with 19 points, 8 games played. But you've got Glimt there, 6 games played, 9 points, 2 wins, 3 defeats, 2 wins, 3 draws, 1 defeat. Not a good sort of time for it, is it? Just tell us about that draw with Tromsø and what's the latest at Bodø Glimt.
Yeah, this one surprised me, I've got to say. I was quite confident they would win this game because they are definitely a better side than Tromsø, but very nearly lost to their northern rivals here. It took a 93rd minute equaliser from an unusual culprit, Joel Mushiga, who we haven't really talked too much about on this Nordic football podcast, but they were very, very close to losing to Tromsø. And I thought the visitors played very well. I've got to be honest. They had a good setup system. They were hard to break down. Glimt, they didn't allow Glimt to dominate the game and assert themselves on the fixture. And the Tromsø goal was really well worked, actually. Nice ball into the box and converted by Vesterland. So you got to give credit to Tromsø. They really were up for this match. Bodø Glimt has had a full week of preparation, so there's no excuses in that department anymore here. Yes, Ulrik Soltnes was suspended for the second straight game, but apart from him and Ola Solbakken, there's not really many others on the sidelines of significance. So they're starting to run out of excuses, Bodø Glimt, but they do. I mean, you can count on one hand how many times they've lost at home in any competition in the last 2-3 years. We nearly had to add a notch to that, but they did. In the end, I think they'll be quite pleased to not to lose to Tromsø. And Tromsø, whilst you say it was a good point, I think they'll be quite gutted that they conceded so late.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's kind of it's a derby game, isn't it? In the past, Tromsø used to be the bigger team, didn't they, in this rivalry, Steve?
They did. Do you know what? For the first time, I'm starting to see. I think there's a really big target on the back of Bodø Glimt. Like, they're now seen as the team to beat in Norway. And I think when they first started, at that fantastic 2020 and the great defence of their crown last year, I think everyone kind of was enjoying their football in the country, quite liking the fact that a new team had come up there and challenged and actually was winning the title, apart from Tromsø fans, that is. But I've kind of noticed that certainly this season, I think every team now kind of treats them as one of the big boys, and you've got to. And there's such a big target on their back. They're the team to beat. They're the gold standard. And everyone wants to get a result against them. And it can happen, can't it? It happens to a lot of defending champions where, as I say, you've got this big target on your back. And certainly for Tromsø, they didn't need any added incentive. But they've probably been working out the whole off-season. How are we going to get a result against Bodø Glimt? Lost their last 5 matches against them. They were bang up for it. And, you could tell. It was a local derby. Tromsø are not a bad side either, in fairness. They do draw a lot of games. But I'm a little bit concerned for Glimt. They didn't assert themselves as I thought they would. They had that great performance against Vålerenga recently, but they haven't really kicked on from it.
Yeah, and I have to say, it looked like a cracking atmosphere in the game. Nice goal across the face of the box, across the edge of the box, face of the box for Tromsø. And then their fans went mad, didn't they, when they scored, the away fans? And then, like you say, late goal, lovely celebration from is it Mugisha, as you mentioned, and sort of nice little backflip. And again, the fans, in the home end were loving it. Kind of like you said, maybe one of those derbies that maybe for the bucket list, if you can make your way up that far north in Norway, then might be one to go and check out one day, because there is a bit of an element of rivalry there. Like you said, Glimt maybe have a bit of a target on their back. They've not won now in the last 3 games, am I right in saying? And how do you see that sort of affecting their next coming games? And as we look towards the middle part of the season, because to be honest, Steve, they're playing catch up already, aren't they? Just even in the top 3.
Well, I think there's a midweek cup round which they're facing someone I've never heard of, Rana FK. So they should win that. Rana FK are nearly 50-1 to win that match. But yeah, domestically, they've now gone winless in 4 games, if you also include the Norwegian Cup final. Now, I think in the past we've had reasons for this. The schedule was really adding up and all that lot. But they had a full 8 days to prepare for Tromsø. And like I said, I'm surprised. I thought they would easily win this match. But I think we have to credit Tromsø for an excellent game plan that they had. They fully deserved the point, in my opinion. And, for them, it's a big positive. For Bodø Glimt, I'm starting to get a little bit concerned. I think their next match is against Haugesund away. And then they've got Strømsgodset home before Molde. So they need 6 points out of those games, Jonathan. If they don't get 6 points out of those, and especially if they keep playing a bit average, then I think there's some alarm bells.
Alarm bells. And in your season preview podcast, which if you haven't listened to, go back on YouTube or back in our archives on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Obviously, Steve, you had Tromsø in 14th. They're currently in 9th, which is a decent start to the season for them. I'm sure you're likely to say. just tell us, how do you, little word for them, because that's, like you said, it's a decent result. They haven't had too bad a start to the season, have they?
If they had a good striker, I think they'd be even higher, because I think Moses Ebi has got a high XG this season. I'm not sure if he's even scored a goal, maybe one goal. So their system is this 3 at the back still, 3-5-2. It's quite versatile and fluid. I mean, I did have them low in the season preview, but it doesn't shock me that they're doing okay at the moment, and there's a long way to go still. There's a lot of teams that are very similar in this league, but so far they had a difficult start. They lost 5-2 at home to Sarpsborg, but they've really recovered well from that. They beat Vålerenga at home and they drew at Glimt. So if they can kick on from that, then it's definitely positive for Tromsø.
Brilliant. Great stuff there. Thanks for reviewing that for us. Let's move on to the next sort of talking points in the games that we've had. And you'd like to sort of give a bit of shout out to Lillestrøm. I mean, they're still unbeaten.
They are. And do you know what? I mean, we had questions, I think, on the last podcast saying or asking, are they legitimate? Are they going to keep with the pace? And I think we've seen in the last couple of rounds that they might well be. They drew at Bodø Glimt, and then they've beaten Sarpsborg 1-0. The sort of win that kind of title challengers produce, where they were the better team, but they weren't significantly better. There were moments they had to defend really strong, and they had to get the goal when it mattered, and they kept the clean sheet. They have the best defence in the league with 4 goals conceded. They've actually played 7 games as well. So, that is impressive. And they faced some good teams in that run, like Bodø Glimt already. It's very positive for Lillestrøm. They've had a clean bill of health of late. They've not had many absences, and they're making the most of it. And if they keep this up, I think they are a legitimate title force. It's very, very encouraging for them.
Yeah, we did talk about them last week, didn't we? And some of their sort of key players and things like that. So I suppose maybe this isn't the time to do that. Obviously, as you've mentioned there, they picked up a decent win this past weekend, just gone, beating Sarpsborg 1-0, goal from Ibrahimai. And as you say, unbeaten. They've played Glimt away as well, Molde away. So they've already racked up some tough fixtures, haven't they? Next 3 games, Sandefjord away, Vålerenga at home, and Tromsø away. And I'm sure, and then they got after the break in June, they've got Rosenborg at home. So I'm sure after this next 3 games, we'll really know if they are genuine title contenders. But yeah, fair play to them. And a word for the manager, Steve. What are your thoughts on the manager and the job he's doing there?
Great job since he took over. He's had 2 different systems since he started the job in the OBOS. They're a great example of, as we've said before, of a team coming down, rebuilding, and coming back up. They kind of needed the relegation in a way. Not that relegation is ever a good thing, but it can be a positive thing for some clubs. It makes them reset, and they've kind of had this rebirth almost, and they're loving life again. I do want a quick word on Sarpsborg, actually, because they've impressed me under Stefan Billborn. They're really good counter-attacking side. He's got them really nicely well organised when they win the ball, and they get forward so quickly. It reminds me of a lot of the Hammarby days, it really does. And it didn't quite suit them. The grass surface doesn't suit them as much as artificial. They look a handful to Sarpsborg, especially they're happy to soak up possession, not have that much of the ball. And I think they're definitely a dark horse for top 6 this year, Sarpsborg.
Fair play to Stefan Billborn, and good job as well to Geir Bakker at Lillestrøm again. Another sort of atmosphere, quality in that game when they scored their opening goal. So good times for Lillestrøm, and maybe a note to any teams who want to get relegated. Maybe as Meatman Soccer says, going down can cleanse you. So shout out to Leeds United, Burnley, or Everton, and maybe it could be a good thing in the long term. Let's move on to Viking. They are also doing quite well. Very well, top of the league, and had a decent win this past week, didn't they, Steve?
Yeah, I'm just trying to make myself feel better this week, Jonathan, just in case the worst happens on Sunday.
Relegation is good, says me myself.
Yeah, I'm in Clark Cuckoo land at times there, aren't I?
But to be fair to you, I mean, I know we're joking, but you do make a fair point, because I remember Lillestrøm back in the days, they were sort of surviving, but they were pretty woeful, weren't they? And like you said, they've come back up again. And they look really fresh now.
Yeah,
so
it happened.
I know I'm sort of joking a little bit with you there, but I do think you make a decent point.
Aston Villa, I think, was a good example recently in the Premier League. It may well be if, say, Everton went down or Burnley. They've kind of been sliding for a while, haven't they? So, but yeah, it can be not the worst thing. But moving on to Viking are still top, 6 wins out of 8, just 1 loss. They were made to really fight hard though against Yerv, you know. It's 3-0, but this didn't really depict the fight that Yerv showed. For a good first half, Yerv were well in this game. They actually had chances to even take the lead. They were reduced to 10 men, played with 10 men for the last, I think, hour of the match. And the breakthrough only came from a penalty, which I thought was soft. I'm not sure it was a penalty. There's been a few dubious penalties recently in Norway. There's been a lot of question. Oh, we need VAR. It was a dubious one. I've actually been quite impressed with Yerv. I've got to be honest. They are giving it absolutely everything, and even in the matches they're losing, they're putting up a great fight. And this, on another day, they might have been able to hold out even for a 0-0 or even take the lead. So, yeah, Viking. I mean, fair play to them. They got the job done. They had to do what they had to do in the end, and that's the sign of kind of a title challenging side as well. It's really interesting that these two sides, Viking, Lillestrøm, are throwing kind of not a spanner into the works, but they putting the cat amongst the pigeons, aren't they? We didn't expect these two to be quite firing like they are right now, and but the Viking are definitely keen to stay top and in that hunt.
In your opinion, when it comes to Yerv, what have they done well, if you know what I mean? Because, sometimes you get teams that come up who are maybe, like you said, a bit of maybe a Burnley. You get teams who are maybe a bit more expansive, progressive, no disrespect to Burnley in terms of the style. I quite like the way they go about things, to be fair. But, you have different styles of teams, don't you, when they come up and it's all against the odds, like a Brentford. What are Yerv doing quite well so far this season, in your opinion?
Well, they're really together as a unit. They do remind me a little bit of what Ranheim were in their foot. Ranheim came up, everyone said they're going to finish bottom, and they finished about 6 or something. It was ridiculous in that first, and then the second season they went down. But Yerv do remind me a lot of their togetherness. They're a great unit. It's like us against the world sort of thing, and they're a physical side. They're happy. They're easily happy to get stuck in and make life difficult. Their home ground, no one's going to want to go there. It's like, I mean, think of like the worst stadium in the top 2 divisions in England or somewhere. I'm trying to think of a comparison. I don't know, the Kenilworth Road maybe, where you have to, in the away end, you have to go through someone's house, things like that, or what Stoke were on a Monday night sort of thing. It's a horrible place to go, and I think they're going to make the most of their home advantage. But I think they're going to get a result on the road soon as well, Jonathan. Like, they've lost all 3, but they've faced some good teams, and sooner or later they're going to surprise someone on their own patch. They're just so determined, and how long you can keep that up for, second half of the season might be difficult, but right now they're just like beavers, fighting like beavers. And the goalkeeper, probably the most impressive player for me has been the goalkeeper, though. Oystein Ovretveit, I think how you pronounce him. He looks definitely Eliteserien level, and no doubt about it, he could do a job for a lot of teams. But there's several others that are getting stuck in, and they just look a great overall team unit. Money can buy you a lot of things in football, but you cannot buy team spirit and stuff like that.
Yeah, Kenilworth Road, walking through the houses. I've been there. It's an interesting experience for sure. So no, good stuff. Fair play to Yerv, and it seems like they're doing fairly well. Like you said, it was a tough result for them. Viking are looking good, aren't they? I don't know if you want to move on, if you had any further comments on that. But
yeah, I quite like Luton's ground, actually, by the way. I've been there a few times, and it's old school. I like it. I mean, it's kind of the same with Yerv, really. It's like there's something about them, those sort of places that, if you like your football, they have a lot of history, and I like that sort of stuff. But yeah, we can move on and probably towards the bottom of the table, Jonathan, if you don't mind.
Indeed, let's do that. So well done to Viking, obviously top of the table, 19 points. Lillestrøm do have a game in hand on them, but if Lillestrøm fail to win that, then Viking will continue to be top. So really great start to the season for them. Major trouble though for the team that we mentioned earlier, my boys. I don't know if I've put some sort of jinx in them, but To be fair, I've been supporting them. Well, not supporting them really, but I've been keeping an eye out for them for the last 2-3 years, and they've been doing well. So it just seems like it's hit the rocks a little bit this season, and it's the bottom of the table. I mean, what is going on? They are well adrift of it at the moment. 1 point from their 6 games so far.
I think what pisses me off the most is I didn't forecast this. Like, if I had predicted them to struggle, I'd be probably quite enjoying their demise. But
not like you two enjoys Christensen.
I have some sympathy because they've had a great run in the Eliteserien in the last few years. They've never even really flirted with relegation, right? They've done brilliantly. If they went down this season like this, I think it would be quite sad. Like, there's some teams that are always down there in whatever league across the world, and you're like, yeah, that was coming their way. They deserved it. You can't keep being in the relegation battle every year without eventually going down. But this feels wrong almost. Like Christiansen are better than this. They deserve. If this is to be, say, a relegation season, it just feels wrong, Jonathan. Now they've had bad results, but they've got bad injuries in defence as well. I think they've got about 5 or 6 defenders ruled out. They've brought in 2 new players. One of them's already injured, so that isn't good. I don't know. When you're losing at home to Stromsø 3-0 is a big concern, in my opinion. Godset are not good travellers. They're in much better form now, I must say. Godset, fair play to them there. But, I mean, I looked at the XG for this game. It was something like 0.75 versus 2.2. That's a shellacking, isn't it? Like, you can't argue against that. And for me, that's probably the most concerning result. Like, some of the other ones have been bad, but I don't know how Christiansen sort this out. Like, they just don't. They're not showing anything, and they've still got some really tough teams to face soon.
I mean, you mentioned it's sort of it's all going wrong for them, and it's a bit unexpected. Is it just because of the injuries, or was their recruitment quite poor in the winter just gone as well?
I think if you look at the last 3 or 4 years, we've often said, or I've often said, the squad shouldn't be doing as well as it has been. So you could say they've overachieved, and it's kind of masked the quality of the squad. Maybe certain years, like Pellegrino had a fantastic season for them, didn't he? Maybe certain individuals have managed to carry them over the line. The goalkeeper last year, McDermott, had a great year. So it might be just kind of a natural regression, but not this far. But, I mean, I'm just looking at their fixtures now. They've got Molde, Tromsø, then Sandefjord, and then Glimt, Rosenborg, Lillestrøm, Vålerenga, Viking. I mean, I just don't see where the points are coming from, Jonathan. They're going to be bottom at the halfway stage of the season. I just don't see how they're not. And they're going to have to really recruit well in that summer transfer window. Otherwise, they'll be going down to the Obosel again, in my opinion, because a lot of the teams they've faced already have been the teams that you'd expect down there.
If there's 1 or 2 players that could keep them up this season, what if there's any shining lights that they could look to and say, he's the man that's going to help us stay in this division or help us get out of this run of form, who would you pinpoint as maybe, a couple of key players? And if like you said, they need to recruit, where would you be looking? I mean, are there any players they could pick up? Are there any positions that you really feel they need to improve? Just give us an overview of their squad and who's going to get them out of this.
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously the defence, they just needs to get fit again. I don't know what some of the injury statuses are. Maybe after this June mini break, they can get players back fit. The attack needs to perhaps carry them, and I'm talking like Turgo Yertsen, Agon Mokoli, perhaps Moses Mora. But I also want to see some more consistency in midfield, Jonathan. The coach has kind of gotten away with this for several years now. This rotation system he has in the middle of the park, where there's never the same 3 seem to play with each other. Just Amadou Diop, Mido Diop is the only real regular. So I think he needs to get more consistency in that middle of the park. But yeah, you're looking at Yertsen, Diop, and possibly Mokoli to step up for them. They need to, if they can't stop conceding goals right now. So we need to start scoring them, and so the offense needs to really help them out.
Brilliant stuff. Good analysis there of Christiansen and where their problems are. It's not been a great season for them at all. I mean, talk about me jinxing them, but you've predicted them to finish 9th. So I think every single season in the past 3 years, you've had them near the bottom. And that was part of the reason I started to support them, because they kept giving you a bit of a kick in the face. So maybe your kindness to them has actually had a bit of reverse psychology on them. But fair play, tough times for Christensen, and it's a long way back from here, isn't it? I mean, a couple of wins and they could get out of, but like you said, they've played a lot of the lower place teams already, so it's not great. I mean, one place above them before we end part one is Odd. They are second from bottom in this league, 6 points, so they're level with Sandefjord and Haugesund, just lower goal difference. But Steve, it's not going so well for them, is it?
No, it's not going very well for Odd, and I'm starting to get concerned for them because pre-season there was a lot of good vibes surrounding this club. The new manager, Paco Janssen, comes fairly highly rated, and they won 2 of the first 3. They didn't look too bad, but since then it's just gone all downhill. They've lost, I think, 4 games in a row now, and most recently 4-0 at home. 4-0 that is at home to Haugesund, and we all know how bad Haugesund have been. They lost their first 5, so I don't know. I mean, maybe the one excuse they've got is that this came, I think, just 4 days after losing at Molde 3-0, where they had 10 men. But I think there's some concerns. The goalkeeper's been probably the best player, Leopold Wallstedt, and he's made it. If he hadn't made so many good saves this year, it might be even worse for them. I can't put my finger on what is going wrong, but they cannot argue with the recent results. And I've got this team wrong. I've got to be honest. A lot of the time, I've predicted them in articles, videos to do well, to win matches. And they've even cost me a few quid, actually. I mean, they won me a few quid as well in the early days of the season. But I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a mystery. But their underlying stats and metrics are not that great.
Do you think they can keep Leopold Wallstedt, because he's in your 10 to watch? If you haven't checked it out on Patreon, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast, Eliteserien and Allsvenskan 10 to watches are both on there in video format for you to digest. Leopold Wallstedt was in your 10 to watch, a 22-year-old goalkeeper at Odu. You really bigged up, and to be fair, he's looked good this season. I like what I've seen of him. Do you think they can keep him, and how important is he to this Odd side? And maybe who else is the key man for them?
Well, the backup goalkeeper, Sondre Rosbach's not too bad, in fairness. But this was the first match I think Wallstedt had a poor game this year. I almost felt like, do you ever get goalkeepers that are doing so well and they kind of keep their team in matches and they earn them points, or they're just being completely overworked, and then eventually it comes to a match where they just can't do it, they can't perform, and they just become kind of this average goalkeeper. And that's what happened against Haugesund. I think he might look back at that and think I could have prevented a couple of them goals, but there's too much pressure being applied to him, and the defense needs to step up. There's enough experience here at Odd. They've hardly had an injury all season, so there's no excuses there whatsoever. And the defense, I think, they need to sort the left back situation out, who they're going to start there. John Kitolano or Joseph Bakai, they need to get that sorted. And, in the middle of the park, I think guys like Joshua Kitolano and Jorgensen need to start improving as well. So the whole team needs to pull itself together. Maybe the manager needs to look at the formation, which is for 5-4-1 at times. It's a bit negative. Maybe he needs to change things up. So for the first time, I'm starting to get a little bit concerned for Odd, though. I must say, they've got Yerv away next. I just think that's a horrible time to face Yerv. And I could see him losing that.
Yeah, it's a learning curve for them as well, isn't it? Teams like Odd, when they have big. For goalkeepers, I mean, like Wallstedt, when they're quite young, like you say, sometimes they're doing so well, and then they can have a dip in it. Concentration is a big part of being a goalkeeper, isn't it? So I suppose you'd probably make a fair point there. I mean, you've got Odd finishing 8th, so let's see if they can improve rapidly from your pre-season preview. But the team who currently is in 8th, before we wrap up part 1, is Rosenborg. Now, I know you fancy them to have a decent season so far. No concerns for you at the moment? Is it just a case of getting in the swing of things? What's your just thoughts on them? Obviously, they're big boys in this league. A lot of listeners are fans of the Rosenborg. Just want to know what your general thoughts. I mean, they're only 1 point off 4th.
Yeah, and there's just been a question live on air has been put in on Rosenborg, actually. So I'll answer that now. There's one other question which I'll come to as well before the end of this section. But it comes from Rasmus Anker. He asks, will Rosenborg be able to regain superiority in Norway when Bodø Glimt Academy is working as well as it is, and which approach would be the fastest for Rosenborg to gain traction? Academy focused or stats-based recruitment or other? I mean, that's a lot of questions in one. Good questions. Yeah, they are a bit behind some other clubs in Norway right now. They are. Glimt, Molde, even like Lillestrøm and Viking seem in a better shape right now. It comes down for me. Look at their manager search in the winter. I think Kjetil Rekdal was like 4th or 5th choice. Now it never bodes well with me when you get someone who wasn't that high on your shortlist. And I like Rekdal in a lot of ways. You've got to respect him, man. He's over 100 caps for his country, disciplined, organised, and I think they'll do all right this year under him. I actually do. Give him a whole season. Be patient with him. I think they should finish probably top 4, maybe even higher. Mentally strong, but if they really want to sort of move to the next level again, I think they need a sort of really modern thinking coach like a Knutsen or in terms of the academy, probably not enough youngsters have come through their system compared to what they used to be at Rosenborg. So the academy is a more longer term thing that needs to be sorted out. In terms of more short term, yes, recruitment perhaps does need to be looked at. There's been some signs of improvement with recruitment, like Borkite looks quite a good signing. Samuel Rogers seems decent enough. Back end of last season, Vecchia. So I think there are some small signs of, well, more than small signs, reasonably decent signs of recovery for Rosenborg, but they really slipped into a hole in that sort of Eirik Horneland era, and they're still trying to drag them the way out of that hole.
Yeah, thanks so much for your question on that. It's a great question, actually, to be fair. Rasmus Anker at Anker_17. And yeah, I mean, my perspective was, I think they have a sporting director, Mikael Dawson, who's Swedish, isn't it? And they have had a very sort of Swedish-focused recruitment drive, in my opinion. The likes of, as you said, Vecchia, who was serious. They had Islamovic, isn't he? He's gone to South Korea now, I believe. Dino Islamovic. So players like that who came from Ostersund. So yeah, it's a strange one. They do seem to look at that Swedish market, and are they really getting the best players from Sweden? I'm not sure. Good question to maybe consider, but hopefully that answers your question, Rasmus. And please, in future weeks, feel free to ask us anything you like, and hopefully that answers your question. That'll do for part 1.
There is one more question.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, actually, we have another question, which I'll just read out for you anyway.
Yes,
it's a great question, and we retweeted it even, didn't we? Soccer Q Ash, I believe you're referencing.
Yes.
It says, why are the Norwegian leagues so inconsistent that they make me want to punch babies? So fair enough. I mean, well, first thing to say is, the Nordic Football Podcast advice is say no to punching babies. Keep punch bags strictly for the gym. But Steve, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's a good question. We've been trying to tick this league this season, and it's been hard, hasn't it? You've commented often on these sort of crazy results we're seeing.
Yes, I've had a few interactions with this particular tweeter, Soccer Q Ash. Thank you very much, Ashley, for your question. She is a professional gambler, actually, and I think, like me, has been quite frustrated with the league. I mean, I've said before how random a lot of the results have been this season. Certainly, Eliteserien. I think Obos seems a little bit more predictable from what I've seen. But it's just this early season issues, randomness. I don't know. I just can't get a real good hold on certain teams, Jonathan, at the moment. It's very tricky. And really the only thing to do, I think, is to stay patient and maybe be quite selective with picks. But I know, not just in terms of results, but goals and both teams to score. It's not always been happening. A lot of people come to Norway for goals and BTTS a lot. So I think you just got to hang in there, Ashley, and maybe even avoid the league for a bit if you really must. We don't want you getting too angry about Eliteserien football. It will come good, though. This league will always come good, and there'll be teams that become very backable for sure.
Great question, Soccer Q Ash. Thank you very much, and do keep your eyes peeled on the Nordic Football Podcast Twitter at Nordic Footpod, where you can ask your questions every week, and we will answer as many as we can. Steve, we've got actually a couple more questions. You're a popular man this week. We got at Remco B4 asked, what's wrong with odd, which we've answered already. So Remco B, thank you so much. This is another one live on there as we go live.
What's wrong with odd? It's not even.
Yeah, exactly. So clever answer there. And definitely not even. And hopefully we've answered that as well. Remco is based in Oslo, in Norway, and is a fan of Willem II and Red Sox, and is a new fan of Eliteserien. So welcome. Hopefully you will be joining us and listening to the show as we go along in the weeks. So thanks a lot for that question. Hopefully, like we said, we've answered it. And then finally, one from @footcalc, which is a really great resource actually on Twitter, which is sort of calculating UEFA coefficient points. So definitely worth a little follow actually. Have a little look at them. And I don't want you to answer it, take too long to answer this, Steve, because we need to wrap up part one. But just briefly, since we've caught it on air, he says, Haugesund went back to 4-4-2 after their horrible start to the season. Have they found the key to success? And then the second part of his question, if they beat Glimt this weekend, do you think they will keep their form and fight for a Conference League spot? So briefly, thoughts on Haugesund there from Footcalc.
If Haugesund qualify for the Conference League, I'll do any sort of forfeit you want.
Vegan?
No way will they challenge for Europe. The only way they'll get that done is if they win the Norwegian Cup at the end of the year. That's not going to happen. But I actually think the key to this, the goalkeeper's played well. Egil Selvig, I think he's come really good the last two games. Not just him, but I'm quite impressed with Haugesund, actually. You lose 5 games in a row, you've got to have some strong mentality to come back and win 2 in a row, haven't you? So fair play to them. I think the manager's made some good changes, but crucially, the players have stepped up as well. They've believed in themselves, and ultimately, you can be as good a coach as you want. The players have got to perform for you on the field, and they have definitely improved a lot the last 2 games.
Great stuff, yeah. And like you say, you do need manager. The players need to buy into managers' ideas, don't they? And who knows if they can beat Glimt, that is their next game. We'll see how it goes. Glimt not having the greatest of time, as you've said. Everybody's cup final. And then in the game after that, they got Rosenborg away. So big 2 games for Haugesund. Not sure about the Conference League, as you've said there, but we can definitely hold you to that vegan challenge if they do get it.
You said vegan. I said any forfeit. It didn't have to be vegan.
I'm naming it a forfeit. So yeah, no, thanks a lot, @Footcalc, for your question as well. Really appreciate your tweets on the coefficient points. They can be quite helpful as well sometimes for us when we're trying to calculate what's going on in the qualification spots. That'll be it for part 1. You can find us on Twitter @NordicFootPod. And coming up in part 2, we will look at everything Allsvenskan. So tune in after this short break.
Welcome back to the Nordic Football Podcast. I'm Steve Wiss, and I'm with Jonathan Verdugberg. Jonathan, so Sweden, Allsvenskan. We are now, there's 2 teams that have played 9 matches. We're nearly a third of the way through the campaign. And at the moment, it's IECOR top of the division. There's been some interesting results recently, not least their most recent match, 3-3 against Hammarby in a wild Stockholm derby.
Yeah, it's all kicking off in Sweden. I have to say that I'm thoroughly enjoying the season so far. I know in pre-season I did say to you, Steve, that I even cast doubts on the future of this podcast, saying is Sweden getting a bit stale? But it's come back with a bang. I have to say this is probably the most enjoyable season I've seen for quite a while. I don't exactly know why, because there's so much talent left the league in the winter window that I was a bit gloomy about the season to come. But, when old leaves fall, new leaves spring, and some new players have come up, some new teams, some new managers, and it's definitely adding a lot of flavour and spice to this league, I have to say. First game that we're going to talk about, of course, is that Stockholm derby, Hammarby AIK. And I have to say, it was probably the best Stockholm derby I've seen in my time covering this league. 3-3, a crazy match. Usually it's very cagey. Usually you kind of don't have much to talk about. You might have one goal and a little bit of controversy, but this game was on fire. Goals from Mohamed Yays, Gustav Ludvigsen, Nahir Basara, 2 from Nabil Bahoui, and 1 from Seb Larsson from the penalty spot. There was also a penalty missed. 3-3. It literally had everything. Janosevic made a save from Bojanic. This game had it all, and it was a brilliant match. A lot of controversy, I have to say, but all in all, thoroughly enjoyable game. Doesn't do much for either side's title credentials, really, in terms of the draw, but it keeps them both top 2 of the league. Obviously, AIK just got their noses in front with a game played extra, and Hammarby are currently second with 17 points.
Yeah, I'm really pleased that you're enjoying the season because, I mean, pre-season, I've seen more hope and life in a twisted Dementor or something, to quote Harry Potter there. But I mean, yeah, I think it's a good result actually for IK. They've away from home, they've got issues, and I think that's a good draw for them. So I think it's not too bad for Hammarby either, really, although they are winless now in 3 fixtures. Controversy, you said. I mean, it naturally goes with Stockholm derbies, doesn't it? But was there anything that kind of really stuck out to you in that way?
Yeah, you say you see more life and hope in in the Harry Potter reference. I was thinking there's about as much hope and life as one of your tweets about Ajaccio I saw this weekend. Where
Oh, no, I'm not again.
You praised them for getting promoted. It was probably the most negative tweet I've ever seen in my life.
I was doing a video just this morning, and I had to mention Ajaccio, and the host reminded me I better not go to Corsica because I might get gunned down.
I've never seen anything. I've never seen anyone. The term "damn with faint praise" has never been more relevant than that negative tweet that you put out about the worst ever team you've seen. But yeah, moving on. Like you say, I was a bit down on the league and wondering where the quality would come from. But we've seen a lot. But yeah, in terms of controversy, ARK were fuming after this derby, absolutely raging. He came out. Alexander Milosevic came out and said, "I don't know how football can even be played here." Papagiannopoulos came out and said, this is below Allsvenskan level in terms of the quality of the refereeing. The pitch as well got ridiculed. Again, he said, that they're talking about how football can be played here. He said he said that the artificial turf at Grimstad is better than the grass here. Complete disaster and the worst pitch I've ever been on, he said, to be completely honest. That 2 teams from Stockholm have to play on this pitch is chaos. So many have complained about the Friends Arena, but this is much, much worse. There's all kind of, Milosevic as well said, I can accept artificial turf, but stepping out on something like this, a concrete mat, he described it as, is a disaster. So there was that. That's part one of the controversy. The other controversy was about VAR potentially. There was a goal. Ludvigson's goal looked clearly offside to me. I have to say, it's the first time I've ever thought in my life, I wish we had VAR. Because in fairness to it, it looked, I mean, if that was in the Premier League, I've seen offsides given in the Premier League that are nowhere near where Ludvigson's positioning was. In the Premier League, obviously, Steve, you got like maybe someone's whisker is like a tiny bit of their moustaches is a little bit offside, and they give it, particularly for certain teams. But this one was like he looked well off, I have to say, and it made me think. I think VAR offside is reasonable, and I don't really like it for penalty shouts, but I think for offside, it's kind of more or less, as long as you determine the criteria, you do 9 times out of 10 get the right decision. But yeah, there's a lot, like I say, there's a lot of penalties and there's just all sorts went on really, Steve. It got very ugly, but I have to say, you also have to focus on some of the quality. Basara's free kick was a spectacular goal. A lot of quality on show from both sides, I thought. Bahoui looked good. He looked really sharp. And all in all, it was a thoroughly enjoyable game, really.
Yeah, and the end result is that, say they're both in the top 2 in the table. We have to talk about a shock result. I mean, Malmö losing 4-0 against Djurgården. I can never remember Malmö losing by such a big margin since we started the Nordic Football Podcast, Jonathan. I might be wrong there. Maybe a last game of the season or something, but 4-0 against Djurgården. I mean, what on earth is going on there for Malmö? Great result for Diff, kind of out of nowhere. But, I mean, what is your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to come back to the Stockholm Live a bit with just a couple of stats, but this game was catastrophic. I have to say, I didn't see it. I didn't actually watch the match, but I've seen sort of the highlights since and that kind of thing. The biggest problem for Malmö at this moment in time is the team sheet. As soon as I saw that team sheet, I think I even saw a tweet from somebody replying to the team sheet saying this is the weakest Malmö I've ever seen. I think it was a fan that just tweeted something like that. And when you looked at that team sheet, the amount of players they are missing, no Kiese Tellin, no Christensen. They've got so many injuries. I said it about 2 weeks ago, didn't Steve? I called them muscle injury FF instead of Malmö FF. And that's kind of how it's gone. There was no Darlene was out. Obviously, Diawara had to play. And to be fair, I like Diawara. I think we talked about him last week. But, the front three, Steve, were pretty much third choice. They had Romain Gall. Where's he disappeared to? We've not seen him for... How many years was it that we talked about Romain Gall? At least 3-4 years that we were talking about him. He's back. So, obviously, he's been out on loan in places like Örebro and not really sort of pulled many trees up. He was supposed to be a big signing for Malmö and did quite well at the beginning, but to see him back was kind of just summed up the level of the injuries. They had Abubakari, and then they had Patriot Sajiju up front. So they really kind of had so many injuries in this game that there's a little bit of mitigating circumstances, I think. But at the same time, you can't rule out the fact that they fell apart. Steve, goals from Chalus' own goal. He's a new player for them, come from Czech Republic, and he's having not the greatest of time of it, really. But Berman Savic was ill this weekend. Lasse Nielsen was ill. So, Ekdal, Heen, and Asoro, who Asoro said he might be now known as the Allsvenskan Divock Origi. He's commented saying after that game, came on and had a really big impact. I don't know why he'd want to be.
He scored incredibly. I mean, misses so many chances, but he scored. Fair play to him.
Yeah. He's a decent player, but excuse me. I'd like to see a lot more from him. But just to read out the Malmö lineup, just so we get a sense of the level of injuries. They're Diawara in goal, Bejimo, Larsen, Chalus, Olsen, Nanasi, Rakic, Penna, Sejdiu, Abubakari, goal. That is just ridiculous, the amount of injuries they have. Keita Tellin was on the bench, but probably not fit enough, I guess. Joe Inge Berget came on, but again, probably fitness issues. The youngster, Hugo Larsson, 17, had to come on again. To be fair, I do like Hugo Larsson. I think he's looked very bright. But if you've got a 17-year-old that's pretty much, he started against Mjällby. You're having to rely on a 17-year-old in his first sort of debut season. It just shows you that it's tough times for Malmö. And there are worrying signs. They're fifth at the moment. They've also played a game more than most teams around them. They've got Hammarby have a game in hand of them and are 2 points ahead of them, for example. And obviously they're 4 points behind AIK. You could never write off Malmö, Steve, because the summer window, always the top teams will lose players. Malmö will have the money to go out and buy players, so you could never write them off. But this is not the greatest of start for their new manager, I have to say.
If you lose a match 4-0 and you're the Malmö manager, if you have so many injuries and you're the Malmö manager, there's going to be questions poked at you quite hard, surely.
Oh yeah, I mean they've been hugely criticised from the fans after this. It's like an unacceptable result, really. This is a bit like Bayern Munich losing 4-0 to, I don't know, Greuther Fürth or someone like that. Well, actually, no, it's probably a bit disrespectful to Diff, but you know what I mean. They're not expected to lose 4-0 to anybody. It doesn't matter who it is. You could say Leverkusen, whoever. I'm not talking about Gilgant there. I'm just talking about in terms of Malmö are not expected to lose 4-0 to anyone. They consider themselves better than everybody. I have to say, we've had a few tweets in recent weeks, like when I've been live reporting on this on Twitter at times at Nordic Football. And I've commented at times saying that Malmö aren't playing well, and people have come back and tweeted me match stats and saying, oh, well, they've had 10 shots or whatever. But honestly, I'm not saying I saw this coming, but this has kind of been in the pipeline, really. Like Malmö have not been, I don't think they've been playing very well. People can point to the stats for this, stats for that, but they've really not been looking that great. Even against Mjällby, they kind of got over the line. They were the much better team, but it's not giving me the vibes of like a proper Malmö side where they're strong, just unbeatable. The sporting director, Andreas Georgsen, formerly of Arsenal, of course, he came out afterwards and said, we can't get away from the fact that we've had so many injuries. At the moment, it's an extreme period for us, and it's extreme in the amount of mistakes and the margins going against us as well. We need to get players back, and I think when we've had times to rotate, we need to keep a better level. So, I don't think there's any pressure on the manager or anything like that. It's very early. He said there's no need for crisis at the moment. There's no crisis plans. But he said we have a very experienced medical team that will work with players to hopefully have as many as possible, again, available soon. So when such things happen, people always look for scapegoats and look for quick solutions. But the most important thing for us is to be a bit calm and keep a cool head. Be self-critical, but also have a rational analysis. So clearly, internally, they're probably looking at the training, what's going on with the training, why they're getting so many injuries, the medical team, and even Milojevic has come out and said, that if Malmö wants to take another step, we must adjust a bit. We still have Champions League games to play, and if we are to have any chance in the Champions League, we must be stronger. So there's clearly something going on. There's a little bit of talks about the high-intensity training sessions. There's some rumours that they've been made to do ridiculous sort of high-intensity sessions like the day before, or a couple of days before games, and that intensity is kind of having an effect on the players. So all is not entirely well at Malmö at this moment in time. I think they've got some tweaking to do to get back, and this run could continue because they've just got so many injuries right now.
You did mention some stats you wanted to talk about from that Stockholm derby. So before we forget, what was that in particular?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about because the stats were so contrasting in this game. I mean, AIK clearly with penalties and everything like that, XG 2.44 versus Hammarby's 1.94. But the possession was ridiculous. Hammarby had 72% possession in this game, Steve.
That's a lot.
665 passes attempted, 601 completed. To AIK's 167 passes completed. I mean, you couldn't get more of a contrast, could you, in terms of team style? It said a lot about the two teams, in my opinion. I think Hammarby are very much in this title race, I have to say. I think this could be the year that they challenge. I do worry about their propensity to go to places like sort of maybe Kalmar and lose. So, Hammarby always have a bit of a reputation in Sweden as a bit of a choker and not really take, AIK and Diff are the big two boys in Stockholm, and Hammarby are kind of looked upon as a bit of a joke in a way from those two teams. Obviously, they would because of their rivalry, but I think that Marti Cifuentes is onto something here, and I think that although I like AIK for the title potentially, if Hammarby can keep this form up and keep their players, that they've shown that they can go toe-to-toe with anybody because, 72% possession is a joke.
But it's very high in a match like that, isn't it, for sure? So I really do rate Cifuentes, and it wouldn't surprise me if they went close this season. Now I'm just looking at our itinerary sheet, and I feel like this could be a carbon copy of previous years, Jonathan, on the next topic of discussion. Problems at IFK Gothenburg. This seems to crop up every single season, unfortunately. And there are problems, aren't they, there? It's been a while since they've won a game of football.
Yeah, they're not doing too well. Drew with Varberg boys this weekend. We talked about it in the weekend preview show. I was saying that Varberg winning is a bit like kind of Morecambe beating Liverpool or something like that at Anfield. And they were heavily, obviously, favourites at EFK, but I didn't really feel that they were guaranteed to win this game, and they didn't. Bit of a strange game. It got stopped for a long time because of I don't really know exactly what happened, but some sort of loud bang occurred during the match. A shot was fired from outside the stadium, I believe. But I don't know if it was like a firework or a gun or whatever it was. A photographer was actually injured by it. I think he burst his eardrums. It was that bad. And, he's had really bad hearing damage from it, I think, just in terms of what's happening. Maybe he was quite close to it. It says 2 photographers actually were injured as a result. I think someone threw either a flare or a banger or something out onto the pitch, and it basically caused the game to be interrupted for a long time, which obviously didn't help the rhythm for EFK or either team, really. There was a comment after the game saying in the future, maybe we will have to think about hearing protection for photographers. They usually have it apparently for high-risk matches, but this was not considered a high-risk game. So, yeah, a bit weird. But, yeah, in terms of EFK Göteborg, I think there's a police investigation going on into what happened. Obviously, it was held at their stadium. And just in general, Steve, they're not firing, not literally firing on all cylinders at the moment. They're looking a bit, without Tobias Sana, the controversy there, the manager falling out with players, Mika Stara. Sana was missing again from this match, so it looks like maybe he might have even played his last game for the club. It's going to be him or the manager, ultimately. So there are some issues at CFK. And in terms of the league table, we did say that they might have a better season than expected, but they're currently 11th. So, it's another sort of lower mid-table start for them.
Yeah, simple question. Is Mikael Stara the right man for EFK, do you think, right now? I
think if you were to ask a lot of EFK fans, they would say no. I think there's rising pressure on him. I think there's internal problems with the players. It's just not a positive sign. Generally speaking, he's not the most attacking coach anyway. They scored 8 goals in 8 games this season. They've got decent forwards. Marcus Berg, arguably the best striker in the league. So can't really accuse them of not having the players. But they're just not. Mika Stara teams have never been hugely expansive, or I remember when he was at Hacken, they were never really like a hugely attacking, entertaining side. He's very much quite conservative manager. So I don't know if that really fits in line with the EF Core fans. So is he the right man? I guess for now he is, but long term, I think there's question marks, more and more question marks this season.
They're down in 11th place. Elfsborg are 10th. Another side kind of mixed form this season. Difficult to predict. We expected a little bit more from them. I know we've only had 8 games, but what's your take on Elfsborg this season?
Yeah, I'm not massively impressed. I had them in 5th start of this season in terms of my season prediction on the Allsvenskan preview show. The media generally as well predicted them 5th. But like you say, they're way down there, aren't they? And they've had a big defeat, really. I consider that a big defeat, losing to Sirius away. Sirius played quite well, I thought. I caught the first half of this game. And to be honest, in the first half, I thought Elfsborg would score. They had the lion's share of kind of their possession. They looked a little bit more threatening in wide areas, the likes of Johan Larsson. But then the final ball is lacking. They're not putting together things that well. And I think the other thing to mention on Elfsborg, Steve, is that I'm not sure they've actually got considered first team at the moment. I feel like Jimmy Tellin is kind of scrambling for his best team. They again, they kind of changed the forward line. This time they had Sverre Gudjonsson, who's the Ida Gudjonsson's son, Ondrejka and Jeppe Ockels up front. In previous games, they've rotated it. Obviously, they've got Per Frick. They've got Rasmus Alm. Alm didn't even play in this game, obviously. He scored a hat-trick against Degerfors not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago. So I don't think they've quite really figured out their first-choice team, but big shock, really, to lose this match. And we have to also give a shout-out to Sirius. They're mid-table, 8th, big win. And I think their recruitment's been quite decent this season, actually. Siwan Kamba was really, really good. De Grassa, I quite like him. He's a bit weak at times, I think. He gets a lot of injuries, but I think it's a good signing, obviously from the Netherlands. He used to be at EF Core. So after, fair play to Tommy Vaiho as well in goal, ex-Diff. He's been really good. So, fair play to Sirius, and this was a bit of a turn-up for the books.
Now, down at the bottom of the table, the rumour is that Degerfors team talk has been done for them recently by the comments you made on the NFP, Jonathan. Since you called them disgraceful, shocking, the worst side you've ever seen in Allsvenskan. To be fair, they did lose 6-0 after you said that. But they bounced back with 2 wins down at the bottom of the table, 2 massive victories for them. But we're actually going to focus more on Sundsvall because they are desperately struggling, aren't they?
Yeah, and fair play, well played to Degerfors. If you listen to the weekend preview show, I know we had some audio issues this week, so apologies for that. I had a bit of recording issues. But hopefully if you did manage to pick it up on Patreon, you'll have heard me saying I think Degerfors will win that game against Helsingborg. I wasn't brave enough to tip it, but I did say I could see them winning it. But yes, Sundsvall, and even I can include Helsingborg in that, they're struggling. Gives us a 1 win, 7 defeats now, 7 goals, 22 conceded. They're just really looking. I said in pre-season, I thought they had the makings of a decent side, and every other media prediction I saw had them bottom. I'm starting to understand maybe now why they have. People were so negative about them. Minus 15 goal difference, which is the worst in the league comfortably. They just look really weak. Norrköping beat them 5-1 this weekend. They just look very weak defensively, and they've got decent players. I like Saku Latupa. I think the problem they have, Steve, is like you say, defensively. Some of the players they sign in that defense, the likes of Forrest Lasso, we joked about. He's got a great name, but there's certain players in that team that I guess have they really got the balance right in defense? Not entirely sure. Obviously, Lasso hasn't played that much, but even like Rasmus Lindqvist, Steve, used to be at AIK. He's been quite poor this season. Blomqvist as well at the back, Lundstrom. They just look really, really easy to play through. The home form isn't amazing either, so it's not like they can kind of rely on teams going north and struggling. AIK kind of dispatched them quite comfortably, and other home games they've had as well. They've not really, Hammarby battered them. Even Degerfors beat them, 3-2 in their ground. So really worrying signs for GIFs at this moment in time. Something's going to need to change. I think, you talked about obviously Odd and obviously Christensen and those kind of teams. I think they're going to need to dip into this window in the coming transfer window. I don't think this current squad probably gets out of it. So they've got a lot of work to do, I think. Joe Corona is looking quite good. Latupa, as I say, I like him. But apart from that, they're very easy to play against.
Why do you think, Jonathan? I mean, we talked about Norway Eliteserien this season, how the newly promoted teams have done quite well. It tends to be a trend in Norway, certainly the first season they come up. But in Sweden, it seems to be a big problem for teams that do get promoted. Even the ones that do survive, it seems to be a real struggle. There seems to be this big gap between Superettan and Allsvenskan at times. Might just be still early doors in the season, but the three teams that have come up are in the bottom four, and Degerfors obviously were third bottom last year anyway. Just avoided danger, didn't they? So, why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we consider it every year, don't we? And when you look at Helsingborg as well, they've not had a good start. They've looked poor, and that's why I said it on the weekend preview show that it wouldn't surprise me if Degerfors beat them, just because of the fact that Degerfors, they do have, as bad as they've been, they have Allsvenskan experience. They're not terrible at home traditionally. Last season anyway, they were quite good at home. And I just felt like Helsingborg going there, they'd probably struggle. I don't know if there's a bigger gap between, say, Obos to Superettan, but like you say, it just seems to be partly I think that teams in Sweden tend to recruit from Superettan. So a lot of these teams can lose their better players. But I do think there is a big gap, I have to say. There's not many teams who come up and really do really well straight away. Ostersunds actually were one of the teams that bucked that trend a little bit, that managed to come up and win the cup. But, they had Graham Potter, who's gone on to prove himself as a really top manager. Other than that, if you look at Helsingborg, for example, the manager now, he's accepted the criticism and said, we have to do better. It looks like his job could even be potentially on the line if it continues in this way. A lot of criticism on him on social media and things like that. So and the other comment I have on that just finally, Steve, like the players, like I say with Helsingborg, the players that come up and do well, really wouldn't surprise me if someone like Taha Ali, for example, gets signed by a bigger club. Teams are already scouting some of their Helsingborg's best players. So that just adds to the kind of problems, isn't it? It's like if you're going to lose your better players, the budgets aren't great in Superettan level, but they're not great at Obos level either. So that is a bit of a conundrum to me. That side of it, like why is the Norwegian second division seem to be a little bit stronger, or is it that Eliteserien is maybe at the bottom end of it is generally weaker than Allsvenskan? Bottom end of it. Maybe
I think it's a good debate. I mean, we should have an episode on that one day, shouldn't we? But it's difficult times and it's not easy after you get promoted. Let's first of all say that. And there have been some success stories in terms of survival. Falkenberg, I think, spring to mind, but it's rare that anyone seems to come up from Sweden and just say randomly finishing mid-table very easily. I suppose in Norway, maybe there's been some higher profile relegations before and hence promotions again. So, but down the bottom it is difficult times for GIF. So anyway, time's running out for this episode, Jonathan. So we're going to have to call it there. It's been a pleasure as always, my friend.
Yep, thanks. Join us next week. We'll look at some of the other games coming up this weekend. And of course, we'll have our weekend show on Patreon for those who are interested in it. Thanks very much. And let's see how our teams can get on this coming weekend. It's been an exciting season so far. I have to say, I've quite enjoyed it in both leagues.
You can follow us on Twitter at Nordic Footpod. You can follow myself, Steve Wiss, at Meatman Soccer. Or where can we find you, Jonathan? Yep,
Twitter at JFFootball, FUTBOL, or on, tweet the Nordic Pod account. I'm usually lingering around on it. So, you can, many ways to get hold of me if you want to.
Ask him some questions. We didn't get any specific questions for Sweden. We had one for Norway from Andrew Sexton about Jack Wilshere. We'll have to ask Henry about that another time. But, let's get some questions in for Jonathan. Really, get some tough ones as well. But until next time then, I'll see you around, everyone. Take care, stay safe, and goodbye.
Thanks all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share on social media, let everyone know. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Take care. Goodbye.